So as promised, here's my review of the Sigma 56mm 1.4 lens that is available for the Sony E mount, the Canon M mount, and for micro four thirds. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I loved this lens. Everything about it worked properly. It was silent focusing. The build quality, everything about it I really liked. I took it with me on a cruise, and I wanted to shoot with it in real life situations. I didn't use a flash with it. I just wanted to shoot naturally. I wanted to be in real situations with my friends and family and just see how the lens performed. Nothing's controlled here. It's just me kind of running and gunning with it, which is how I think a lens like this will be used. Maybe some of you will use it in a studio application, and it's a great focal length for that. I believe it's an 82 to 85 millimeter equivalent. I want to say 82, but I'm not sure. But it gives you that telephoto range, and it really blurred out the background very nicely in a lot of images. So the first thing I'm going to start with is the build quality. This is not an inexpensive lens. It's under $500, but I have it here up against the Canon Nifty 50 with my Viltrox adapter, or the Canon adapter would be the same size. And as you can see, they're about the same size. So it's not a tremendous lens. It has a nice rubber focus ring here. It's solid feeling. It has nice weight to it, and it actually comes with a small lens hood. So when this is on the M50, it's actually a very good looking lens. It's just well built. You can just tell. I had a Sigma 50mm 1.4 art lens, and this very much reminds me of the build quality of that lens. Now, yes, it's more than double the price, so it's not quite as heavy and sturdy feeling, and there's not as much glass inside the lens. But this is a very well-built lens, and you can tell it from the second you pick it up. So is this lens sharp? I'm going to be dropping images in, as I go through here, and this was a vacation, so I wasn't going crazy trying to take pictures, but there were certain times when I took it out specifically to see how it did. So these images here were us in port, and this Norwegian ship would happen to be pulling in behind us. So I took the lens out and went on my balcony, and I was able to actually get some shots. And the first shot here is actually how far I was at 56 millimeters. So this is how far away I actually was. The second shot is a crop. Now the angle's a little different because the ship was moving as I took these, but as you can see, it's a very, very sharp lens. And as far as focus goes, it's very fast focusing. So this is a lens that I'm absolutely confident would be sharp in any situation. And just so you know that this was shot at 1.4. This is not shot at like f4 or f9 or f8. When I put the lens on the camera, before I even got on the ship, I put a 3-stop ND filter on it. I knew I wanted to shoot this lens at 1.4. I wouldn't buy this focal length if I wasn't going to shoot it at 1.4. It's really the whole reason why you get a lens like this, is to get the soft out of focus backgrounds. And I wanted to see how it did at 1.4 in almost every situation. Now, I want to talk about the vignetting and the distortion that this lens has. It does have a little bit. So in this situation here, we were docked in Mexico right next to another ship. And the actual balcony lines were perfect to demonstrate this. So there's 3 images here, and the first one I shot at 1.4, the second one at f4, and the third one at f5.6. Now, I've zoomed in on these, and they look identical. There's no difference in sharpness in the corners, but there is distortion, and you can see it clearly on the balcony line. So this is a one-click fix in Lightroom. You just go into Lightroom, and in the lens correction panel, you just you put in your lens, and it actually Lightroom corrects for that. And this last image is the corrected version of it, so you can see it straightens it right out. So while this does have some distortion, it's not horrendous. And if you're taking portraits of people, which I think a lot of people are going to use this lens for, this is not going to show up anywhere. So you really don't have to worry about it too much. But if for some reason you're using this to shoot something that has straight lines in it, it's very easily correctable. And I did notice there was a little bit of vignetting around some of the images. Nothing crazy, but just a little bit. And again, in Lightroom, you can correct for that. But when I'm shooting people, I usually add a vignette anyway. So a lot of times it saves me a step in editing if the lens actually has a little bit of that built into the lens pretty much. So again, not something that you need to worry about, and something that's super easy to correct. It takes 2 seconds. The autofocus was actually very fast. And when we were in Grand Cayman, I actually took the camera and I went into the water with it. And I took a couple of images of my wife, and you could see the depth of field here where the jet ski is behind her. Her foot is out of the water, but she's perfectly in focus. So there's a very shallow depth of field here. And the camera locks right on, and you get fast focusing, and the focusing motor is absolutely silent. So if you wanted to use this for video, I think this is a great lens for video. But as far as focus, and here's another image of one of our friends, a couple that we went with, and they made a funny pose for me while they were in the water. And again, you can see the sharpness of the image, and you can see the shallow depth of field where the water in front of them and behind them is out of focus. And that was great. That was something that I really wanted to get because it adds a unique image. You pull your cell phone out in this image, or you just shoot at f9, or you pull out like a snapshot, put your camera in auto. I don't think you're going to get this type of depth of field. Now, ideally in this situation, I would have liked to have had a flash on the camera. Now, this does have, the M50 does have a pop-up flash, but I wanted to just shoot in natural light, and it's a little shadowy, and I got some hot spots, but I really wasn't worried about that. I just wanted to get the camera to focus and see what the depth of field was like. So, also when we were in Mexico, I was walking around the pier, and I just started taking some shots. Just walking around, there were crowds of people, and I wanted to just isolate some things. So the marketplace there is very vibrant, and there's a lot of people. There's people dressed up. Like in this image here of this little girl, the two characters, I guess you would call them, with the masks on, I focused on the one closest to the camera. And as you can see, the girl falls out of focus, and then the far character on the other side actually falls out of focus even more. So at 1.4, you can really separate your subject with this lens. And that's beautiful. I love shooting with a full frame camera for this reason alone, that when I use my 70-200 or a 50mm 1.4 or even 1.8, you get that separation, even at 2.8 on a full frame camera. Now the 22mm f2 lens does give you a nice shallow out of focus area, but with a crop sensor, I just didn't think it was as deep as it could have been. This lens was totally fantastic. I felt like the depth of field here, and here's some more images. I took a picture of a guitar. I took a picture of, I was in the Ron John shop, and this image right here is actually of a t-shirt. The first image is shot at 1.4, and the next one is at f4. And you can see the difference of the out of focus area just by going from 1.4 to f4. So you can, play with your depth of field very easily with this. But look at this image that my daughter was holding, this little Ron John, I don't even know what you call it, the little magnet or something. But look at how out of focus it is. She was about 2 feet, she had her arm extended about 2 feet. And this is just beautiful separation. And this is what you're going for when you buy a lens like this. So if this is what you're going for in your photography, and you want these type of images with portraits and pictures of people, where you can totally separate them from the background. And in some situations, you can't even tell what the background is. I handed my camera off to my friend, and he took a picture of my family, and you could see the ship behind it is you know what it is. It's a ship, but it's pretty out of focus. You can really create the depth of field that you want with this lens, and I really enjoyed using it. So if you're shooting with a Sony E-mount or a micro four thirds camera. Now the micro four thirds camera is actually an even smaller sensor. You're going to get a 110mm equivalent on a micro four thirds sensor. And I'm not sure if the depth of field is going to be affected by that. And I think it might be. Now you're shooting a little longer at 110mm, but the sensor is smaller. So I'm not really sure about that. But on the Canon M50, and I'm imagining the Sony E-mount cameras, this is what it's going to look like. And I loved it. It was just a great lens. So here's the thing that you probably are not going to expect me to say here is I'm actually going to return the lens. And it has nothing to do with the lens. It has to do with my shooting style. I found that this lens in most situations was a little long for me as a walk-around lens. So now if I was using this camera and lens as a portrait setup, or I used it in those type of situations often, I would absolutely keep this lens, but I don't. When I know I'm going out to shoot a dedicated portrait, or I'm going to be shooting people for something, I prefer to use my D750 with a full frame sensor and a 70-200 lens. So that's me. So for this camera and my application of it, this lens is not perfect for me. I think the 50 millimeter equivalent, which is the 30 millimeter 1.4 Sigma lens in this same line, would be a better fit for me. Now, you're going to have to know how you shoot before you determine which one is better for you. And there's 3 of these lenses. There's a 16 millimeter, which is a 24 millimeter equivalent. There's a 30 millimeter, which is roughly a 50 millimeter equivalent. And then there's this lens, the 56 millimeter, which is an 82 to 85 millimeter equivalent. So they give you a lens in each kind of focal range, a wide, a normal, and a telephoto. So you have to know how you want to use them. I mean, you could get all 3 if you wanted to. The 3 of them together are only about, I don't know, $1,200, $1,300, and that would make for a very, very nice camera kit for the Canon M50 or the Sony E-mount lenses. So that's something you have to decide on your own. But for me, I'm going to actually return this and maybe get the 30 millimeter and try that one out. But as far as the build quality, the sharpness, the ease of use, the depth of field that I get out of it, this was a really great lens. So I highly recommend it. If you're shooting with the Canon M50 right now or any M-mount lens, you should get one of these if you think that this focal length is something that you want and you're looking for a telephoto lens for your camera. This is a great lens. If you shoot Sony, I'm not familiar with the Sony cameras. I imagine it performs equally as well. And to me, this is every bit as nice or nicer than any of the Canon M-mount lenses that I own. It's sturdier, it feels heavier, it feels better built, to be honest with you. So if you were on the fence between maybe this line of lenses, the Sigma lenses, and the Canon 32 millimeter 1.4, you know, I don't know. I think I would go with the Sigma at this point. But that's just me. I haven't used that Canon version, but I have the 11 to 22. I have the 22 millimeter. I have the kit lens, all Canon M-mount lenses, and they feel a little more plasticky than this lens did. Okay, so I hope this helped some of you out. I'm going to drop in the M50 playlist that we have here, so if you're new to the Canon M50 and you're researching it, you can check it out here. And then I'm going to drop this review of the kit lens that comes with the M50, so you know what you're getting when you get the camera right out of the box, and then you can see if you want to add a lens like this. Okay, thanks for watching.